the music ends,
Wait till the music ends.
and then I come up and I just X out.
And you X out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always have to take a breather before I start one of these things, so bear with me for a sec. Imagine where you were when the decision was made. Remember who you were when you made that decision. Now imagine where you will be in 24 hours from now. Welcome to the official memorial services for the Ascension Flight as provided by Celestis Memorial Spaceflights. We are broadcasting to you live from the Courtyard by Marriott here in beautiful Cocoa Beach. We are honored to have in our presence the families of our honored participants scheduled to make a magnificent journey into outer space. Wow. You know, my dream to travel among the stars have been with me since my days of Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. My envy is more towards the families who know the people who are actually granted that possibility. A few miles away, a Falcon 9 Transporter 5 rocket with the essence of your loved ones stand ready to receive your attendance. This is a historic mission for us. It's a historic mission for all of you. Each one of these times that I've stood here, I've felt nervous, anxious, filled with excitement because I know what's to come. The gladness that we here at Celestis have carrying out this phase of our involvement with you is amazing. Our past missions have garnered us friends and relationships with the people we serve, and we will continue to do so. I'm so proud to be at your service, and I can't wait to see the smiles and the experiences, the hugs, everything that'll come when you're on site tomorrow. That will complete our final journey with you and the transference of the journey to your loved ones. I now have the pleasure of telling you a little bit about this next man. In 1994, Charles Chafer co-founded Celestis Inc., the pioneer and global leader in memorial spaceflight services. Charles M. Chafer is the Chief Executive Officer of Space Services Holdings, Inc. and its subsidiaries. A pioneer of the commercial space age, Chafer began his career while an undergraduate at Georgetown University as an advisor to Dr. Gerard K. O'Neill, the Princeton physicist and author of The High Frontier, who is widely credited as the father of the modern age of space industrialization and colonization, under the leadership of successful real estate entrepreneur David Hanna Jr. and retired Mercury and Apollo-Soyuz astronaut Donald K. Deke Slayton. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Charles Chafer for the Celestis Memorial Spaceflight and the Ascension Flight. Charles?
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the 18th Celestis Memorial Spaceflight. And yes, I've been to them all. And what's amazing is that each one is special. And the reason that it's special is because of you all. This is your afternoon. This is for you, about you, and because of you. And we want to welcome everyone. Many people have traveled far and have been waiting for today and tomorrow. And we're just glad you're here. And we'll spend the afternoon remembering your loved ones, celebrating the choice that they or you or all of you combined made to celebrate that final journey into space, to occupy Earth orbit as few have, and to complete a process that we know from all of our experience will help you with the closure that you're looking for. I always say people come here at various stages of loss and grief, and we don't pretend to be able to alleviate that. We don't proffer that somehow your grief will be less as a result of your days with us, but I can tell you that I know that you will find a glimmer of hope, a glimmer of remembrance, and most especially time that's otherwise impossible to spend, where you're standing a few miles away and watching your loved one or loved ones reach for the stars. It's a really compelling thing, and words really aren't adequate at all to describe what you're going to go through, but we're going to try a little bit. But I also know that your experience will be a personal experience, and it's a shared experience in some ways. In other ways, it's only for you. And we recognize that, we celebrate that, we try to be supportive of that at each step along the way. We have an excellent afternoon of remembrance ahead of us. Before we do that remembrance, I want to acknowledge the global audience for today's memorial service. Not everyone who has a family member or a loved one on board has been able to travel here to Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, but they'll be able, through our webcasts and through the live launch event tomorrow, to be able to share what you're going to be going through and celebrating today. So first, welcome people from all around the world. believe we have representatives from 5 nations on this flight. That ups us to about 40 nations represented over time. So this isn't just an experience here in Florida, it's an experience around the world. Second thing that I want to acknowledge is my hard-working team, the folks of Celestis Inc. I can describe to you all the practice sessions, all the preparation, all the interactions that you've had with our team. But basically, I just want to say another job well done, folks, and we appreciate you. With that, I want to talk just a moment about what we're going to be doing for the rest of your days here. Today is the memorial service. As I said, it's about you. We have invited any of you that want to speak today to do so. We ask only one thing. I know everybody's story is personal, important, significant, and life-giving. If we all told the stories at length that we want to tell, we'd be here overnight. And therefore, we've asked everyone who is speaking to try to limit yourselves to a couple to 3 minutes. And I know that's hard, and we're not going to drag you off the stage if you go a little bit over. But understand, everybody's out there waiting for their say. So as you come up and you feel the love and you feel the excitement of the mission, share with us a vignette, share with us an important story, share with us how you feel about today. But remember that there are folks in line and waiting to talk. And that's the only time I'll say this. Just try to remember that as we move forward. All right, well, enough words from me for now. I'll be back. But at every one of our missions, we try to bring to you someone who's been there already, someone who can relate to you, at least in a vicarious form, what your loved one is going to go through, from T0 to orbit achieved, and the views from space, and the effect that traveling to space has had on them. Celestis was founded for the very reason that we know we all can't go yet, even though we all may want to go yet. So what we try to do is bring someone who's had that privilege to share their story with you. And we're really pleased today that we've got a 4-time space shuttle astronaut here to tell you his story. I found him an engaging, positive national hero. And with that, I'd like to bring up Don Thomas.
Wow, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be with everybody here today. As you heard, my name is Don Thomas. I had the amazing opportunity to fly 4 times on the space shuttle. 3 of those were on Space Shuttle Columbia. Another flight was on Space Shuttle Discovery. And during those missions, I spent a total of 44 days in space. And during that time, I went around the Earth 692 times. Now think about this. I'm a little envious of your loved ones because around the 4th of July, they're going to beat my record of 44 days orbiting the Earth. So I'm a little envious of what's ahead for all of your friends and loved ones here. But to see the Earth like I got to see was truly a life-changing experience. And I want to share, some of those with you here this morning. So let's talk about reaching for the stars. Now, just a little bit of my story. I wanted to be an astronaut ever since I was 6 years old. And when I was 6, we launched the first American to space, Alan Shepard, from Cape Canaveral, just a few miles up the road. And at my elementary school in Cleveland, Ohio, they had us watch the launch on a small black and white TV. And as soon as Alan Shepard was in space, I remember sitting there saying, I want to do that. So ever since I was 6, I wanted to ride a rocket to space. I wanted to experience zero gravity floating around up there. And I wanted to see these sunrises and sunsets that the astronauts would describe. So this was a lifelong dream of mine. And I never let go of that dream. I kept working hard in school. I went on to college, got my degrees, and then I started applying to NASA to get in, and it took me 4 tries. The first time I applied, NASA said no. The second time, no. Third time, I made the group of 100 semifinalists, so I got very close, but the result was the same, no. And then the fourth time I applied, I got into the program. And I got selected when I was 35 years old, and I started a 4-year training program. So the first time I made it to space, I was 39. And from a 6-year-old boy till 39, that was a long time coming, but it was so, so worth the wait. And I went on to fly 4 missions. This is the crew from my last flight. The last time I was in space was 25 years ago. In July, this summer, it'll be 25 years aboard Space Shuttle Columbia. We had 7 astronauts on that mission, 2 military test pilots in the front row with the helmets to help us fly the shuttle. On the left-hand side with the helmet is our commander, Jim Hulsell. He was an Air Force test pilot. He used to fly the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane. On the right-hand side with the helmet is our pilot. Her name was Susan Still. And Susan was a pretty unique individual, only the second woman to pilot the space shuttle. And Susan was one of our country's top Navy fighter pilots. So it was a great opportunity for me to fly with her on this mission. And then in the background, we've got 5 of our science astronauts. We're called mission specialists and payload specialists. We do the science on board. We're trained to work the robotic arm if there's a need for that. We deploy satellites and do spacewalks. So we each have our area of specialty on the crew. You probably don't recognize that guy on the far right-hand side, but that's the way I used to look 25 years ago before glasses, gray hair, wrinkles, and a few pounds around the middle. And I heard that. Here you see the shuttle on the launch pad. I took this picture the night before my first mission. Went out there about midnight or so, and it was so amazing just to stand there right at the base of the rocket, all lit up like you see it with the bright lights against that pitch black sky. And as I stood there gazing up at it, I had incredible butterflies in my stomach. A little piece of me was nervous, a little piece of me was scared, but my main emotion was one of great excitement because I knew 12 hours from when I'm taking this picture, I'm going to be on my way to space, and I almost couldn't believe where I was and what I was about to do. So they bring the whole crew out on launch morning, maybe about 3 hours before liftoff. We take an elevator up, and I'm just standing outside of Space Shuttle Columbia here. They strap us into our seats one at a time. So I'm just hanging out, waiting, and when they call my name, they'll say, "Hey, Don, we're ready for you." I'll turn that corner to the left, walk down an access arm, and there at the end you see the round hatch or door for the shuttle. Before I climb inside, these 2 gentlemen in the white suits would help me put on a parachute, get the helmet on, gloves on. Once we're all set, I get on my hands and knees, crawl on that white board, go through the round hatch, and we've got people inside to help strap us into our seats. We're sitting in seats like you're sitting in today, but we're laying down on our backs. We've got shoulder harnesses and seat belts. They strap us in good and tight because there's a lot of shaking and vibration during launch, and you don't want to bounce out of your seat and hurt yourself. So they strap us in nice and tight. Once that's all done, they close and seal that side hatch, and then everybody moves away from us 3.5 miles. And when you realized why they just moved away from you 3.5 miles, that's another good moment to have butterflies. They're getting out of what we call the blast zone. So if you're 3.5 miles or further, if anything bad happens, you're probably okay. Otherwise, there could be an issue. But for the astronauts, we are ready to go. We've dreamed of this. We've trained for this, like the engines. And it's very quiet inside the shuttle up until 6 seconds before liftoff. At that point, the 3 big engines at the tail of the shuttle started coming up to full power. And I'm laying on my back inside. I could hear the roar of the engines. I could feel the shaking and vibration going on. And then 6 seconds later, we light those big white solid rocket boosters. And the instant they lit, boom, immediately we would take off. So again, laying on my back, I hear the roar. I feel the shaking and vibration. And right at that moment of liftoff, I felt a push in my back. And it felt to me like somebody had their hand in the middle of my back and pushing me up into the sky. And that's what the shuttle's doing, literally pushing us, shoving us up in the air. And this picture is taken 4 seconds after liftoff. We're going 120 miles an hour. you know. And we have engines on the shuttle that help push us up, and I can explain, you know, the physics behind that. But what also helps get me to space are the people yelling and screaming, and my family that's there, you know, cheering me on, and I could feel them. I felt the push of the rocket. I could feel the push from my family as well as I made my way to space. 8.5 minutes later, the engine shut down. It's perfectly quiet, and you're in space. It only takes 8.5 minutes to get to space. That was always amazing to me. It probably took you more than 8.5 minutes to walk in the front door and get checked in for your rooms here, right? And think about that. In a short 8.5 minutes, you could end up being 200 miles above the Earth. And at this point, we're traveling at 17,500 miles an hour. That's 5 miles a second. And when those engines shut down, it wasn't a gradual tapering off of the thrust. And during launch, I was getting 3 times the force of gravity, so it kind of felt like somebody sitting on my chest, pinning me down. It was a little harder to breathe. It wasn't painful, just a little uncomfortable. And within a microsecond, the engine shut down, and you go from 3 times this force of gravity to boom, 0 gravity, floating. Perfectly silent up there. It's such an incredible transition. And one of my first jobs on my first flight was to grab a camera and take a picture of our big fuel tank. We always did that to make sure there wasn't any damage to it, and if there was, we can fix it before we launch the next crew. So my first job, we get to space, unstrap from my seat, grab a camera, go to the window. And I'm taking pictures. I look out the window, I see our big fuel tank, and I grab the camera, and I'm taking pictures like every 10 or 15 seconds as this tank is tumbling end over end. We're getting pictures of all sides of it. And after about 5 minutes, I ran out of film. That's how long ago I flew in space. We had film and cameras back then. But as soon as I finished the last picture, I put the camera down, and then I looked in the background. And can anybody guess what I saw? The Earth. I hadn't even seen it because I've been trained. Get the camera, take the pictures, focus it, take a picture. I was just focused on that task. That's from years of training. And then I put the camera down, and finally in the background, wow, there's the incredible blue Earth. And the first time you see it, you'll hear the gasp from the astronaut. It'll go, oh! You know, I'd seen pictures of the Earth. I'd seen, you know, we'd studied this. I had 20, 30 hours of Earth observation training, but when I saw it with my own eyes, I just let out a gasp. It was such an incredible moment. And that was my favorite thing to do when I was in space on my missions, to look out the window. Floating in 0 gravity is a lot of fun, but for me, looking out the window, seeing our planet was the most fun for me. And here I have a map in my hand. I'm trying to figure out where we are around planet Earth. And I'm looking out a window towards the back end of the shuttle. And I took a camera right up to that window and took a picture. And you can see what my eyes are seeing. And this is the view from 200 miles up. This is what your loved ones are going to be seeing, you know, in about 24 hours from now. And all the blue you see here is the Pacific Ocean. The white areas are puffy clouds. That peninsula coming down from the upper right-hand corner is Baja California. So San Diego, California, just to the upper right-hand corner of that picture. And if you look at carefully at the bottom edge of the Earth, either to the right or to the left of the shuttle, you may see a little thin blue line. Can you see that? That is our atmosphere. You know, on a nice sunny day like we have here in Cocoa Beach, you look up at that blue sky, it looks like it goes on forever and ever. From space, we see the atmosphere edge on. And you see it looks paper thin. And every astronaut, whoever travels to space, you see this fragile planet. It just makes you appreciate how fragile Earth is and how we have to take better care of this place. Here's a big hurricane. I saw many storms when I was up there. This was a big one over the Pacific Ocean, about 400 miles across. And we flew right over the eye of it. And from 200 miles up, I could look straight down, look right into the eye, and see the blue water of the Pacific Ocean. It looked like a giant whirlpool. And I remember I was like white-knuckled holding on to the shuttle because I thought if I let go, I'm going to get sucked into this whirlpool. That could never happen, but that was the emotional impact I had. And here you see the Himalaya Mountains. And right there at the center, that's Mount Everest. Now, I can stand up in front of you here today and tell you without lying, I have seen the top of Mount Everest with my own eyes about 25 times during my missions. I'm sensing you're not too impressed by this. I call it the lazy man's way to see the top of Mount Everest, right? But I've seen Mount Everest, I've seen the Great Barrier Reef off Australia, the Amazon rainforest, Mount Kilimanjaro, so many amazing sights orbiting the Earth. And here you all recognize the great state of Florida. Near central Florida there on the east coast, you can see Cape Canaveral jutting out into the Atlantic Ocean. And we talk about the nightlife here in Florida. Here's all our cities. And you can see the Kennedy Space Center, Merritt Island, where we're at there. Just spectacular sight, day or night, looking out the window. And the sunrises are just spectacular. I don't have the right adjective for that. But we go around the Earth every hour and a half, so we see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every 24 hours day up there. So I would try to see as many of these as I could when I was in space. Even if I was scheduled to go to bed in 5 minutes, if I knew the sun was coming up, I'm going to go see the sunrise because it was a limited amount of time that I could do that. So psychologically, it's not great to watch the sun go up and then go to bed, but I didn't want to miss one of these. At the end of my missions, then it would be time to come home. We'd fire 2 engines in the tail of the shuttle, slow our speed down just a few hundred miles an hour. But at that, we would begin our fall back to Earth. And it would take about 55 minutes before we'd end up landing right back here at the Kennedy Space Center. We touch down like an airplane, put out that drag parachute, roll to a stop, and then we'd just sit and wait for them to open the hatch so we could get out. And it would typically take them an hour or so before we could exit the shuttle. And coming back from space, I felt like I weighed about 2,000 pounds because I'd been used to floating around weightless, and then suddenly I came back to this normal pull of gravity, and I just felt so heavy. And it took about a week or so to get your muscle strength back, and then you're pretty much back to normal. But you're a changed person for this experience. I told you the number one change for anybody who has this experience is, you view the Earth differently. You see how fragile our planet is. And the second change that comes over you is you have a more global perspective of your place on planet Earth. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, so I used to tell people I'm from Cleveland. This is how I identified myself. Today, if you ask me, hey, where are you from, Don? I'm going to say I'm from Earth. And it no longer matters to me what city, state, country, continent, language, religion. None of that matters. We're all Earthlings here. In about 24 hours, your friends and loved ones are going to be experiencing that effect. And they're going to be Earthlings as well, orbiting our Earth. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention here. You're in for a great experience tomorrow. When they light the rocket, it'll take, 10 or 15 seconds for the sound waves to get to you. So it's going to be silent except for your yelling and screaming that's going to be going on. So the first sign you'll hear would be the noise from all of you, and then you'll hear the roar of the engines, and you'll feel the sound waves coming. And it'll just be a spectacular event. And about 10 minutes or so after the rocket launches, the first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket is going to come down and land. And I saw the very first one that landed back here at Cape Canaveral. This is maybe 9 years ago or so. And it landed, I was about 10 miles away. You're going to be a lot closer than that. And when it actually landed, it was beyond the trees and the scrub. I couldn't see the actual landing. But as it went behind the trees, all of a sudden there was a huge explosion. Boom! And I thought, whoa, that thing just blew up. But it hadn't. It successfully landed. What I was listening to was the sonic boom that took place probably 10 minutes earlier, and it took that long for that sound wave to get back to me here on planet Earth. So I would think, tomorrow when you hear that final boom, that's like a salute to your friends and family. Not a 21-gun salute, but this is one heck of a salute, on their final journey to space here. So I want to thank you very much. Charles, thank you for having me here to be part of this special day. Thanks, everybody.
You Want a Physicist to Speak at Your Funeral by Aaron Freeman. You want a physicist to speak at your funeral. You want the physicist to talk to your grieving family about the conservation of energy, so they will understand that your energy has not died. You want the physicist to remind your sobbing mother about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy is created in the universe and none is destroyed. You want your mother to know that all your energy, every vibration, every BTU of heat, every wave of every particle that was her beloved child remains with her in this world. You want the physicist to tell your weeping father that amid the energies of the cosmos, you gave as good as you got. And at one point, you'd hope that the physicist would step down from the pulpit and walk to your broken-hearted spouse there in the pew and tell him that all the photons that ever bounced off your face, all the particles whose paths were interrupted by your smile, by the touch of your hair, hundreds of trillions of particles have raced off of you like children, their ways forever changed by you. And as your widow rocks in the arms of a loving family, may the physicist let her know that all the photons that bounced from you were gathered in the particle detectors that are her eyes, that those photons created within her constellations of electromagnetically charged neurons whose energy will go on forever. And the physicist will remind the congregation of how much of all our energy is given off as heat. There may be a few fanning themselves with their programs, as he says it, and he will tell them that the warmth that flowed through you in life is still here, still part of all that we are, even as we who mourn continue in the heat of our own lives. And you'll want the physicist to explain to those who loved you that they need not have faith. Indeed, they should not have faith. Let them know that they can measure, that scientists have measured precisely the conservation of energy and found it accurate, verifiable, and consistent across space and time. You can hope your family will examine the evidence and satisfy themselves that the science is sound and that they'll be comforted to know your energy is still around. According to the law of the conservation of energy, not a bit of you is gone. You're just less ordered. Amen. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Don, John, and Anna. We now turn to the most important part of today's memorial service, the opportunity for all of us to hear your stories of your loved one and how they have made it to today. And to do that, I'm going to introduce the newest member of the Celestis staff. You know, I've done these memorial services 18 times, and as my mind got older and more feeble, I thought, you know, I better start thinking about who's going to be the next me. Because our intent at Celestis is to provide our service on the moon, on Mars, and everywhere that humans go in the solar system. So I was very fortunate to reach out and find Colby Youngblood, who has assumed the position of president of Celestis, and this will be his first opportunity to share with you the stories that you're presenting. Colby?
Thank you, Charlie. It's a great honor for me to be here in front of you today, but it is absolutely not about me. It's about you and your loved one. So with that said, I would like to go ahead and get right into this. So the way we're going to do this today is I'm going to call the first speaker up, and then I will call the second speaker. And depending on what side of the room you're in, just make the person that's in queue, just make your way to either side of the room. I'm not going to call you by your name. I'm going to call up your participant's name. And so we will start with Donovan Andrew Puddick. So for the speaker for Donovan Andrew Puddick, I'd like to bring you forward first. And then our family that's going to be in queue is the speaker for Stacy L. Cameron.
The idea of sending Donovan's ashes into space didn't come from a love of space, but rather from his ongoing interest in Elon Musk's brain chips. The idea began as more of a what if, a few months after his death. What if we emailed Elon and asked if there was a way we could get some of Don's ashes sent up on a SpaceX launch? Well, we never wrote that email, but we did start looking and found that it was actually possible. So we sent an email, the lovely Christiana called us, and we scrambled to get ashes across the border and down to Texas in a time crunch, and here we are. Why such a grand gesture for Donovan? Well, we lost Donovan to suicide in November of 2021. But that doesn't define who he was. Donovan was kind, sensitive, emotionally intelligent beyond his 16 years. And he was so loved. He played soccer, loved his video games and his dogs, enjoyed movies and playing pranks, and so much more. On days when life would get to be too much, Donovan would walk up to the bench on the hill by our house and sit and listen to music while looking out over the city. That was his peace above the chaos. We do the things we do to honor Donovan's life and the battle he fought that most of us can't even imagine. It is also our hope that in being open and honest, we can help advocate for mental health awareness, because Donovan would not have wanted anyone to suffer the way he did. I now believe Don's interest in the brain chips stemmed mostly from a hope that they would somehow help with mental health. As we watch the launch tomorrow, I wish Donovan and all of our loved ones peace above the chaos. And I wish all of us peace in looking up and knowing that they are up there watching over us, and also beside us every day, guiding us to live our best life and honoring them in everything we do.
Family for Stacy L. Cameron, followed by Nancy Higgs Tappan.
My husband Stace was a quiet, introspective man who disliked crowds and fuss. He would hate this. He had a quirky sense of humor that his daughter, Caitlin, and I loved, and we would often remind each other of his jokes, silly observations, and stories. He loved us, and he adored his granddaughter, Cameron Grace, and he is about to have a grandson, and I'm infinitely sorry that his grandson will not get to know him. But before all of us, Stace was captivated by flight and stories of space travel. He loved to share interesting stories he read in analog and in sci-fi novels. He watched hours and hours of the Wings channel. I think it's the same program over and over, and was very happy when the NASA channel became available. He would have loved hearing Don Thomas describe his experiences as an astronaut, and he would have loved to see a rocket launch. I am very grateful to Celestis for the opportunity to fulfill a dream that he didn't even know was possible, and for us to be able to watch his orbit for the next few years. Right on, Stace. Our love follows you to the stars.
The family of Nancy Hanks Tappan, followed by Derek Stephen Yanis.
Blank. A hollow place deep in our souls. A feeling of numbness, endless like black holes. But Nancy would tell you, when she got on a roll, it is how you view it, based on what you know. And a mother of four knows a lot.
You do enough. Her paintings hung colored in Stephen Hawking's space, suggesting that black holes thought to leave no trace. Our nurseries for stars, could this be the case? Her thoughts while drinking tea at her place.
In chaos, brilliant life is born. You have enough? As humans, we measure our worth several ways. By the coinage we have and vacation days. Yet Nancy sought to see how each human plays and how we treat each other at the end of our days. Worth is measured in human kindness. You are enough. So if chaos breeds life and kindness is value, then craft your mind each day to pursue, no matter how empty that hole is in you. Your kindness and chaos will give birth to truth.
You do enough, you have enough, and you are enough. We are living stars, and we are all made of star stuff.
Thank you.
The family for Derek Stephen Yanis.
I'm Brianna Alonzo, this is my brother Tony Alonzo. Today we're here to honor my uncle Derek Stephen Yanis. I'm not gonna lie, John kind of stole my thunder with the conservation of energy. So I'm kind of going on a whim here. We just saw my uncle as the Funkle. He was wild and a kid's best friend. He suffered from a condition called congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which affects your ability to produce hormones, cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. But within that, he taught us how to live a life within a number of days. We weren't supposed to meet him. He wasn't supposed to live past 10 or past 40, and we had the privilege for all of those years. So epinephrine and norepinephrine, most people know is fight or flight. And he fought as long as he could, but for now, we chose flight.
The family of Travis Michael Casey, followed by the family for Marjorie Dufton.
It's hard. Sorry. Travis, this is his sister Brock, or sister Megan, his brother Brock, his mother Melissa, and his grandmother Kathy. Travis had muscular dystrophy. He wasn't supposed to live past 10, and we got to enjoy his life until 27. He did everything and was a kid that knew everything. His biggest things was sports and one-liners. He was the best at, if you were at a party or had a down moment, he was the best that could sit there and just say that one-liner and then just bring you right there with him. It was his idea and to do this. He knew exactly what he had and what his life expectancy was. And so when we were talking about it, he brought up that he's like, I don't want to be in the ground. I don't want to look up at people. I want to look down and shine down on everybody. And he's our rainbow. And that's what we see in him. So tomorrow, he'll have a new family that's up there with him. And I am so honored to be with all of you as sharing Travis with us too. So thank you.
The family for Marjorie Dufton, followed by the family for Roman Nosek.
My mother, Marge, was a great adventurer from very early on. She started out, excuse me, she started out as getting her private pilot's license when she was a teenager. She moved from New Jersey to Long Beach, California, where she got her flight instructor license and was at the time the youngest female flight instructor in the United States. She went on and got her commercial pilot's license. She participated in the Powder Puff Derby, which is an all-women's cross-country air race. She and my father started a successful crop dusting company in Arizona. And then in the early 60s, the Mercury space program was evaluating women for travel in space. And they invited her to join this group. She accepted, but unfortunately they disbanded it prior to her getting to join. So that was one of her wishes that she never got granted, was space flight. But she went on to a lot of other adventures. I want to thank Charles and I want to thank Celestis for allowing this wish to survive. Thank you.
The family for Roman Nosek, followed by the family for Dan Randall.
So my father, Roman, and here I'm Luke, this is my sister Laura, my nephew Nolan. I never knew whether my father wanted to go to space. He traveled far. He brought us here from Poland in the 70s, and I'm so grateful for that and for the life he enabled for us in this country. And he loved this country so much and still reminded us of that up until the last few weeks of his life. So when I was looking at this opportunity, because he did love SpaceX, he had a lot of SpaceX hats, and he was always wearing them even after he got too big for them.
Wear the same shirt every day.
The same SpaceX shirt every day, and I don't think he would have passed the health check to be able to go actually to space, even if you were to buy one of those billionaire astronaut tickets, even if that was possible. And that was his choice to live that way. But the thing that I loved about him is how much he loved everybody and loved being around people. And whether he was talking to the mailman or whether he was just, and we were traveling as a family or meeting anybody, he wanted to be around people and he loved everybody. And I looked at the flights and I saw we could go in orbit or we could go off into deep space, he wants to be near us. He wants to be near the Earth. And I just remembered that about him, and we'll be able to look up at him And we know that on this flight, this is the one we chose. He's going to be up there for a few years, but then he's going to get to come back and be with us. So he's never leaving. And that's really also why we're here as a family. The family was surprised too, like why I wanted us to be together, because the way he never leaves is that he never leaves us by being in our hearts for the rest of our lives. And I missed you, Laura and Nolan and Mom and everyone from our funeral a few weeks ago. And I don't want his soul to ever leave us. I don't want to forget. I know it doesn't, but I don't want to forget about it. So this is a chance for us to not forget about him one more time and to be together with him tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
The family for Dan Randall. The family for Charles Timothy Smith. The family for Winter Ann Reynolds. They will be followed by the family for Edmund F. Gaffney.
So I don't know if you guys can tell by all the noisy kids, but Winter had a really large family. And I'm Winter's wife, and when I first came into this family, I thought, I can't take this. This is too much. These guys are insane. But I will say they are by far the greatest gift she ever gave me. So on the plane ride over here, I was trying really hard to think of how to put into words how much the loss of Winter just ripped us all apart. And I realized really quickly that it'd be impossible to put that into words, as I know you guys know. So I'm gonna try. Winter was by far the center of our family. She was the glue that held us all together and still today binds us together. She was our daughter, our sister, our niece, our aunt, our cousin. To me, I called her wife. She was my sun, my moon, my universe. I never imagined life without Winter. And it still feels like a dream. The thing you need to know about Winter is she was a redhead to the core. She was the contradiction in every term. She was fire and ice. She was the worst potty mouth you ever heard. She was a little bit bougie and a little bit redneck, by far. But most of all, she was all of our best friends. She was smart, she was beautiful, she was funny, she was a great business owner, and just an amazing human. Winter and I loved to travel, and I'm very fortunate that before she passed away, she told me that if anything ever happened to her, she wanted to be cremated and her ashes be taken back to Switzerland. However, she did not know space was an option, so I know that she would have thought tomorrow's launch was the coolest thing ever. She was a total space nerd. She would drive us crazy watching Star Wars and The Fifth Element, Alien versus Predator for like the 1,000th time.
Legos at Christmas.
Oh, Legos, Star Wars Legos. So we just wanted to say that we're grateful to Winter for bringing us all together and for this launch, but also for teaching us that life is short and to cherish every moment like it's your last. So it's only, it only makes sense to send Winter screaming into space because that's how she lived her life. She never did anything half speed. Whew. So we just want to say from the family, thank you to Winter for giving us the opportunity to come together just one more time to celebrate her. She was our shining star in this dark universe. We miss her immensely, but we all know that we'll be together again one day in the cosmos. So thanks, guys.
Thank you to Celestis.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
The family for Edmund F. Gaffney.
Good afternoon. Our father, Edmund F. Gaffney, grew up in the backwoods of rural Arkansas with a small cabin, an outhouse, but he was looking up at the stars. And he definitely had a dream. And that dream led him to reading every science fiction book he could find and going into the Air Force, becoming into telecommunications, and eventually searching out the only computer in Springfield, Illinois, where we grew up, because in the 70s that was the only place that had a computer for him to go to college on. And then he began to instill that love of science and technology into us.
Our dad and mom were huge science fans. They loved nothing more than going to a museum and cornering docents. There was even a point system for going to museums, and the most points earned one day was they got a docent to go to lunch with them. And Mr. Thomas said they had the opportunity to speak with you. They would have scored major points, and they would have talked your ear off. So we are thrilled for this final tribute to our dad. This would have been a lifelong dream and his last biggest adventure. So it's an honor to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
The family for Shelley Taylor would like me to read on their behalf. Shelley was my rock, and I was her role. I was a lucky man to be married to her. My 21 years with Shelley were the best 21 years of my life. She loved space and science fiction. The first was Star Trek, and there were many other TV shows and movies. Men walking on the moon. Wow. She would go there. There was one movie where the spacecraft was going into deep space and the entire crew was put in suspended sleep to be brought awake via a computer 60 years later. This is something that fascinated Shelley, asking me, could this be done? I told her anything is possible. She laughed, and that is the only one thing I loved about her. When Felix Baumgartner went up 24 miles into the stratosphere and parachuted back to Earth, Shelley asked me, what do you think he's thinking about? I said he probably hopes the parachute opens. And again, Shelley laughed. William Shatner went up in space and said it was fantastic. Now you get to go up in space. Imagine Captain Kirk really did get into space. We talked about this, and I said maybe in the next 20 years, instead of taking a road trip, you just go to your nearest spaceport and book a ticket to go into space and circle the globe for a week. So some of the fantasy of some space shows actually became reality. I was in the process of entering Shelley's name to get a chance to get to space, but she got sick. Well, thanks to Celestis, Shelley will get her wish to be in space. Right now, I am mad at Shelley because she will get to go to space before me. Not really, I'm happy for her. You see, I was watching the same space and science fiction TV shows and movies. I would like to be there with all of you because we are all there for the same reason, to fulfill a wish. James Collins. Anna? The family of Dr. Oleg V. Verkodanov would like me to speak for the family, followed by the family of Carleen Burton Eckroat. Astronomer, astrophysicist, cosmologist, author, science communicator, friend, husband, and father. Dr. Oleg V. Verkodanov was one of the most wonderful and bright star stuffs of his generation. He was an amazing professor, mentor, and science communicator. He inspired thousands of people through his lectures. Oleg was born on March 17, 1965, in an old Russian city, Veliki Novgorod, and since his earliest years, he was fascinated by astronomy. Oleg served on numerous advisory committees for the Russian National Academy of Sciences and the Russian Federation for Basic Research. He was leading a research group on radio astrophysics at the Special Astrophysical Observatory in Russia, and for several years worked as an invited professor at the Theoretical Astrophysical Center at the Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen, Denmark. He was a passionate scientist, systematically giving lectures in Russian and abroad, organizing conferences and astrophysical schools, some of which were named after him, collaborating on numerous scientific, media, and art projects both inside and outside academia. His fascination with the universe was contagious and inspiring. He was an amazing storyteller who could explain even the most complex phenomena in a simple and comprehensive way. Oleg used to say that after his death, he had to be burned and his ashes were to be scattered over Jupiter. And in response to the surprised looks, he used to add, "Do not worry, just think creatively. Every joke is only partly a joke, and his family, friends, and students have decided to fulfill his wish and send him to space, the cosmic ending to a cosmic life." The family for Carleen Burton Eckroat, followed by the family for Skylar Rose Beatty.
Good afternoon. Our family is pleased to be here today to remember and celebrate Carleen Burton Eckroat. We're thankful to the Celestis Company, Charles, you guys do a good show, for giving this opportunity to send her into space, fulfill a childhood dream, and help satisfy a passion that we all saw throughout her adulthood for all things space. We're also grateful that Carleen will not be traveling alone. Look around this room and hear the life stories, and they're amazing people. So she'll be in good company, accompanied by great people, many that had long, fulfilling, distinguished, and passionate lives. And sadly, by some whose time on Earth was just way too short. Our extended family has taken the opportunity presented here for this launch, and we've taken it seriously. We've brought 16 of us to be here firsthand, most traveling from Maryland, Delaware, even one on the West Coast, a couple from England, and decided to be here in person. I'd like to recognize Carleen's husband of 63 years, Dr. Robert James Eckroat. Dr. Eckroat, raise your hand, please. He's our father, our patriarch, our leader, who is here with us today, and just to let you know, he was high school sweethearts with Carleen for their entire adult lives. But make no mistake about it, Carleen wanted to go to space. She wanted to walk on the moon. But in reality, this mission was the opportunity. It was the only way it was going to happen. She often said she was born before her time, and she was. She also had a tendency for motion sickness, so she certainly would have gotten washed out of astronaut training school. That's for sure. But just think about it. She did live to see men walk on the moon. She got to see and study and watch news stories on the NASA deep space missions. Robots all over Mars, right? And then, important to her, were women astronauts, some in command positions, leading missions to the International Space Station. So a paradigm barely imaginable when Carlene was this young, curious, adventurous girl when she was just starting to form her dreams. So Carlene, our wife, mother, grandmother, and our aunt, was indeed a special person. She was always thinking about others. She was kind to everybody that she met. She loved animals, and she would feed the animals so much food, just way too much. In fact, I'm blaming her on my dog that's still a little bit chubby. She adored her 5 grandchildren, and they are all here today. Carlene was able to see them grow into fine young men and women with many of her same good qualities. Carlene was loved and admired by so many. She will be a great travel companion to your loved ones. Mom, we will never stop loving you and missing you, and we will think of you often as we gaze up towards the stars. Godspeed.
The family for Skylar Rose Beatty, followed by the family for Charles Richard Boulay.
My name is Crystal. I'm Skylar's mom. This is her sister, Alexia. Skylar was 8 when she was taken from us this past January. One of Skylar's favorite features were her red hair and blue eyes, which if you would ask her, she would tell you that's the rarest combination of hair and eye color that there is. She was proud of that, and it was fitting for her. We like to say Sky was a firecracker. She was kind, and she was sweet, and she wanted to be friends with everyone, but she was very stubborn. Sky wanted to be an astronaut from the time she was about 3. She had an astronaut costume that she wore to preschool, and then she wore around the house until it didn't fit her anymore. After Skylar passed away, my coworkers wanted to do something special for her, and they came to me with this idea and asked if it was something that I liked for her, and I could not think of a more fitting, more perfect journey for Skylar. Skylar would have absolutely loved this. I want to say thank you to Celestis for making my baby girl's dream come true. Skylar and I always said, I love you to the moon and the stars and all the way back. Knowing that Sky will be up there in the stars and knowing that her dream come true is the greatest tribute and goodbye that I could think to possibly give her.
One of my favorite memories of us together is when we fake jumping to the moon. She always told me that she was going to go up there when she turned 26. Her golden birthday. Despite all the fake wrestling matches that ended up in fights, I take them all back if it meant having her back. I think of her every day, sometimes with a smile and sometimes with tears. But I know that someday the smiles will outweigh the tears. I only got a few short 8 years with her, but her sunshine, personality, and her bright smile were definitely her trademarks. I look up at the stars every so often and remember that the one shining bright is always her.
The family for Charles Richard Boulay, followed by the family for May May.
He was a man named Charles Richard Boulay. He was husband of more than 65 years to Kathy. He was a father to Cam, Courtney, Kelly, and my mother Annette. To my cousins, brother, and I, he was grandpa. He was a man who loved his family, and we all loved him. I remember any time we were all together for Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever, we would always have something going on and he'd be in the middle of it. But whenever he'd take a break, he and Grandma would be off to the side and they would see us all together. And They would smile if you looked at the right time, and you knew that they were happy. He was a man who inspired. I remember him the best when he was up at the house that he and Kathy built up in Westcliff. And whenever we would visit, I'd go up with him to his workshop, and we'd spend hours going, talking about some engineering project he had going, or something I learned about science in school. And one of these, from when I was about 12 years old, stands out. And we were talking about the elements, the periodic table, and I asked him, as so many kids does, why are there so many? Why are there so many on this table? Where do they come from? And so he answered me in full. And he started from the very beginning. That in the universe, at the very beginning, there was only helium, hydrogen, and a little bit of lithium. And that was it. But there's so many more elements. Eventually, those elements, that hydrogen and helium, collapsed into stars. And those stars, in their furnace-like hearts, fused those atoms together and created all of the elements and filled out the periodic table, combining the heavier and heavier elements. And then when these stars run out of fuel, they die. And sometimes in beautiful, incredible explosions called supernovae. And when they do, the contents of the hearts of those stars are scattered throughout the universe. And that dust from the heart of stars is what everything you and I see and we are. It's what we're made of. And that blew my little mind. And made an incredible impression upon me and inspired me to pursue physics and science. He was a man who built and a man who invented. He was a lifelong engineer that pushed the world forward. And he was one of the giants upon which whose shoulders we stand today. And he became a leader in inertial navigational systems that enabled incredible projects that continue to inspire us. Some of those were the SR-71 Blackbird, the Minuteman missile, the C-5A Galaxy, and the Space Shuttle, which many of us got to go see today. And he worked hard for all of these things and more. He made sure to always have a home for his family, and so that his girls could live a full life. He was a man who adventured, loving skiing, hiking, sailing, and golfing. He always enjoyed the outdoors and tried to engender an appreciation of the world in all of us. He was a man named Charles Richard Boulay. He was a man that was truly made of stardust. And tomorrow, along with all of the incredible loved ones we've heard about today, will ride atop a pillar of fire beyond the top of the sky, and once again be among the stars. Thank you.
The family of Maeve May, followed by the family for Thomas Kane.
So I know what you're all wondering. My mother married into that name. In 1947, she met and married Ken May, and they were married for 65 glorious years before he passed in 2012. My mom had a couple of really important qualities, and they really boiled down to mostly, though, curiosity. If she were in this room, she would ask each of you something so specific and listen so sincerely that you would feel that she had known you forever. Her curiosity and kindness with people was a defining feature of my mom. the other part of her curiosity was that she was technically curious. She was an early adopter. I remember my parents had some cell phones, and I came home at one point and she said, "Here, help me with my iPhone." And I thought, "Mom, what?" She said, "Well, it's easier to text." The picture that you see that goes by was on her 92nd birthday. And she got the gift she wanted, which was a new Mac laptop, rose gold. And she never lost that technical curiosity and that affinity for puzzles and all things technical. She and my dad moved here to Florida, South Florida in the 50s, and I grew up in the shadow of Apollo in a time when women really weren't aspiring to space careers, and the acronym STEM didn't exist. But eventually, and with some twists and turns, I've ended up in the aerospace business, as has my husband, Glenn. And I spent many years at NASA, and I'm still working in space. And I think about how that happened. And part of it is I got to go see the first Star Wars movie in the 1970s in the Rocking Chair Theater in Lake Worth, Florida, with my mom. My father didn't really like movies, so Mom and I would go during the day when he was doing something else. And we went and we saw Star Wars, and she was smitten by Star Wars. She already loved Star Trek. She was entertained by Spock and Scotty, but she really liked Captain Kirk. That was her favorite mug when she got the set. She'd always have her coffee in her Captain Kirk mug. And you know, she loved Star Wars. She loved all of the characters. She thought Yoda was adorable. And that was something else about my mom, is she delighted in what she delighted in. If my father said it was silly, she didn't care. She loved Yoda. She called my children R2-D2 and C-3PO. I hope you're watching, guys, because the personalities are still really close. And so somehow through all of that, I ended up in a career in space. And you think about when you're a kid and you make things and you take them to your mom, and you're like, that ashtray or that thing that they put on the refrigerator or whatever it is. You know, I certainly did that as a child. And throughout my entire career, I kept doing the same thing. Mom, here's my Mars mission. Here, Mom, here's my launch. Here's a mission patch from something we're doing, or a pin, forever. And she loved them all, and she paid attention to all of it. She never asked to go into space. She really didn't. And I don't know if she had an aspiration for it, but when she passed, I realized I could say, Mom, I'm putting you on one of those. I'm sending you to space. One last thing. Also, for those who have not seen a launch, I've seen a bunch. I've seen probably 10 or 12. I always cry. I cry at every launch. Tomorrow I'm going to be crying real hard. So y'all just join in with me this time. Thank you.
The family for Thomas Kane, followed by the family for Alan Clive. The family for Craig Evan Gayhart. Oh, you're good. This is the family for Alan Clive.
Oh, hello. Well, grief is complicated. It comes and goes in waves, and I imagine some of you are getting hit by one of the really hard ones right now. The ones that can just pull you out and you don't know if you're going to come back to the beach, and some of you may be feeling it more like a soft and gentle tide. I still don't know how to feel. I had a black outfit, I had a bright outfit, and I wore the bright one today because I wanted to be nice and shiny like the stars that all of our loved ones are going up to be with. But I still don't know entirely how I feel. But I do want to share with you about our father, Alan Clive, and the tremendous inspiration he was to us and the impact that he had on our lives. He passed away from cancer in 2008. He was a historian, a civil rights advocate, a fantastic storyteller, and above all, a wonderful father. He was a brilliant scholar of history. If you have that person in your life who knows everything about something, that was our father about history, especially World War II. He was a brilliant, brilliant historian. And he was a teacher of history as well. And he loved space. He loved Star Trek, and he loved hard sci-fi, but he also loved the space shuttle, NASA, and Sally Ride. And when I was growing up, I got to know Florida and the Southeast because our father was a senior staff member in FEMA's Office of Equal Rights. And he served in over 25 offices across the country, ensuring that people with disabilities would have equitable access to disaster preparedness and relief services. And so when disaster hit Florida, he came. I knew he would go, and I knew he would be here to help people. He and our mom raised us with both Judaism and science, with literature and news, with art and nature. And we're very grateful. Our father was blind. He lost his vision at 22 years old. He used a Braille and Speak, which is a small little typewriter you can type Braille on, and he read books on tape. And one of my favorite stories to tell about my father is how he told stories to us. When my brother and I were little, he would read books on tape first. So he would listen to the stories, read famous works of literature, everything from The Hitchhiker's Guide to Mark Twain. And then he would stay up with us at night and he would read those stories back to us by remembering them from his own mind, from his own way of telling the story. And that's how we grew up with stories from my dad. So to share just how much he inspired us, my brother went on to get an internship at NASA, get involved with private space companies, and join the SpaceX team. And he was part of building the Falcon 9 and making sure it could come back to Earth. I'm very grateful to him that our family can be here today.
I don't want to take too much time, but my dad would send me emails all the time, and he was a rich scholar of science fiction. And so, being a blind man, he would read science fiction via his, word scanner device, and I would have like reams and reams of full Heinlein books in my inbox. I would show up, like in 2007, and The Roads Must Roll was in my my inbox, and I had no way to read them. Kindles were barely out. But he picked the word infundibulum. He knew that we were going to do this because we told him about this before he died. He was diagnosed with cancer in 1996, and he passed away in 2008. And I talked to him about this, and, he thought it was a neat idea. I'm not sure if he really bought that it was going to happen. And I said, hey, Dad, it's asked you on the site, if you want a special word. And he said, infundibulum. And I'm like, what is that? It's like, oh, it's from The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. And I'm like, oh, okay. I read that yesterday. And I understand what he meant by it. And the Chronosync Classic Infundibulum is the place in which everything and everyone is right, even if they conflict, even if they disagree. It all is the same, and always everything that always has been always was, and everything that ever will be has always been. And I didn't find the themes of The Sirens of Titan to be terrifically appropriate. It was about loss, lack of control, terror, fear, confusion, and I can understand how my father in the grips of the late stages of cancer would feel that way. But I think he'd much more appreciate the story. Sorry, wow. Invincible by Stanislaw Lem. which is a story of how men from Earth went to an alien world and dealt with some of the most terrifying things and yet escaped unscathed. And I'll say one more thing. The rocket he'll be flying on tomorrow is invincible. This rocket, the first stage, Booster 1061, it has flown humans to space twice before. It has gone up on Crew 1, it has gone up on Crew 2, it has continued to fly in service of the SpaceX mission and human spaceflight. And the fact that my dad gets to share a vehicle and a ride, and all of you, your family members, get to share a ride of astronauts who have flown to the space station fills me with pride, and I'm so happy to have been part of the SpaceX family. And I want to extend a great thank you to Mark Street for making sure stage 2 is going to work just right. Thank you. All right.
I want to give the family of Craig Evan Gayhart one more chance. I didn't see them coming. Okay, the family for Lawrence Covey. Okay. That's okay. That's okay.
So today's actually Craig's 21st birthday. Crazy enough, would have been his 21st. I would have tried to get him to drink something. I guarantee he wouldn't have. He was a EMT. He had this mentor in high school. He didn't really have any kind of specific direction he wanted to go in throughout high school, middle school, and he met this instructor named Mr. Simler that really set him on a course to become an EMT, and he followed that dream, and all he wanted to do was help people. He's actually 6'4", 5", wear a size 15, 16 shoe. We had to order online. But he just wanted to help people. He used to take walks at night to clear his head on this street right off of ours. And he'd always talk about looking up at the stars. He'd go out there middle of the night. Sometimes it'd be like 3 a.m. He'd just go out there. He'd drive out there first, and then he'd just walk around 2-3 hours looking up at the stars. So we couldn't really find any other or better way to honor him than send him up to be in the stars. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The family for Lawrence Larry Covey. Followed by the family for Roy Patrick Smith.
Hi, I'm Ellie Covey. I didn't prepare anything because I just couldn't. It hurts too much. But I will say, my husband, when he was a little boy, he always wanted to be a space cowboy. He used to dress up and just pretend. And part of him never really grew up. In fact, when I met him, he was working as a technical editor for the American Aeronautics and Astrodynamics Journal or something, and I always thought he was a front for the CIA or something. I'm like, nobody can really have an organization named that. But he did, and he went on to become a computer programmer, but he was an avid science fiction fan, but none of the Star Trek stuff. He was into the hardcore type of thing. He always enjoyed it. Sorry. I mean, I am, and my kids are. In fact, I'm having a conversation with my children last night about Star Wars, so they're nerds. No offense to one of them. But after my first son was born, for his first birthday, I bought a train set for my son, Dan. I bought the train set for Larry, to be honest. And that started a lifelong quest for building. Every time we moved into a bigger house, his train layouts got bigger and bigger. And our home is over 3,000 square feet, and his train layout is 2,000 square feet. He was really into recycling things. But one of the last layouts he created, he decided to have a train on the moon. And he built a moonscape, and he created the train, which is a rocket.
It's actually, yeah, it's nitrogen-powered train, and the thing flies.
And he created a space bar. He got these glasses, I think you bought them for him for Christmas, of all the different planets, and he set up this whole thing. He had a remarkable imagination, and he used it. Anything else you want to say?
Just that there's nowhere else I think my father belongs than in outer space. He never felt at home here, and he said having a family made him feel connected to people in ways he never thought he would. So if he can't be here with us and with his family, he's where he belongs, and I'm excited to see him go there.
And I will say, as we were hearing the stories of everybody, Debbie is going, Dad would like that person. Dad would like, he'd be friendly with that person. And the last thing I want to say is we had a beloved nephew who was really our age and was Larry's best friend, my best friend, and he passed away from cancer. And when he was in hospice, Larry called him to say goodbye, and the last thing he said to him was, "See you on the other side." And that's what I hope someday we'll all see our loved ones on the other side. Thank you.
The family for Rory Patrick Smith, followed by the family for Raymond Pena.
With this space launch, I have one dream, and my dream is that it takes Rory closer to his big brother, who we never knew. Rory was 3 when Devin passed away at the age of 8. He's been gone 33 years, and I can only hope that someday I might see both my boys again.
Rory was an incredible human being, as all of your family members are also. We want to thank you very much for this opportunity. Our daughter Tara worked with Rory on this, and she got everything organized. She wanted me to let you know that her, along with us, we've read all your stories, and we've cried over all of you. Rory was described by his friends as both the alpha dog and the lone wolf. He was a musician, he built guitars, he was a warrior poet, and there wasn't a person he would meet that he wouldn't help. He walked on the edge of the rope all the time, and he developed a sense of compassion and empathy and sympathy and caring and love for people that most of us wouldn't even want to look at, and he would give of himself to anybody who needed help. When we lost our Devin, I'm sorry, someone gave us a book called The Little Prince, and they wanted us to be able to read it to Tara and Rory, and I think it's just really appropriate, and I'd just like to share this one little part. In one of the stars I shall be living, in one of them I shall be laughing, and so it will be as if all the stars were laughing when you look at the sky at night. And when your sorrow is comforted, time soothes all sorrows, you will be content that you have known me. You will always be my friend. I shall not leave you.
The family for Raymond Pena.
Hello, my name is Ralph. My father was Raymond Pena, and I would like to thank Celestis for giving me this opportunity. My father really would have liked to have gone to space while he was alive, but unfortunately it wasn't financially possible for him based on a New York City sergeant's salary. So anyway, he wasn't able to survive that, but he's going to make the trip, and that's one of his final wishes. But he was a survivor in many, many ways. He was born during World War II and in 1942, and after the war was over, people's lives were starting to get back together. Unfortunately, my father, at the age of 4, he lost both of his parents to sudden illness within 1 year. He was a little boy, and he was orphaned, and there was no family members to take care of him here in the States. So only members of his family left were those in Cuba. So they sent him back to Cuba, and they couldn't afford an extra mouth to feed, so what they did was they sent him to orphanages. Fortunately, in the mid-50s, the family had gathered some money, brought him back to the United States just before the Castro regime. So he survived that. And then he went and he finished high school here in the Bronx, New York. It's not here. And he became a competitive gymnast while he was in high school, and he actually defeated some of the cadets at West Point. So he was a survivor, and he was someone who persevered to accomplish more for himself. He later joined the Army, the 82nd Airborne, out of Fort Bragg, and he served with distinguished service, retired there, and he came back to New York, where he loved, and he tried to make it as a commercial artist, but he couldn't handle the pressure. So what does my father do? He signs up to become a New York City police officer. No pressure there. Unfortunately, during his career, he learned that he had a brain tumor. That's when it was in infancy in the medical field. But he survived it. He survived the surgery. He went on and finished his career with the NYPD, and then he went on to drive a limousine. While he was driving a limousine, he suffered a heart attack, which resulted in a car accident. It required a double bypass. But my sister at that time was about to get married, and he was not going to miss the wedding. So he survived the walk down the aisle and the cost of the wedding. Later on, he found out that he had a second brain tumor operation, and that caused loss of vision in one eye and a little bit of mobility issues. But he was still a survivor, and he still remained self-sufficient. Unfortunately, in July of 2020, he passed from the last of many strokes that he had. And this grieving process has been very difficult for me because this is the first type of service I was able to have for him because of the COVID epidemic. So I want to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to send my father on one of his final wishes. Thank you.
So that concludes all of our designated speakers. And I'd like to just give anyone, if anyone has or would like to come up and say something else, we'd like to open the floor just for a moment. Absolutely, come on up.
Hi, my name's Ken Williams, and my wife and I, Nita, Megan Williams was our daughter. She passed away. You see this girl with a little dog by her side. That was about February 15th of 2021. We don't get very many snows in Nashville, very many. But that was a snow, and that was just an opportunity for her to go. So she went sledding with her boyfriend and with her little dog. And that was 2 weeks before she found out she had colon cancer. She passed away at 35. It was a tough month for us. Of course, tougher for her. But she was a adventurous gal. She was unreal. She was an attorney in Nashville. And it was funny. She said most attorneys do not want to go to court. They shy away from that. They're afraid of it. And I go, why do you go to law school if you're afraid to go to court? She says, well, they won't settle. Everything they do, they want to settle. She says, I want to go to court. I want to argue. And she did that all her life. She argued with us growing up. Sometimes it gets so bad. I remember we were about 8 years, she was about 8 years old. She was in, we were in where we were, Europe. And she and her brother was getting into it, fighting. I said, okay, I want both of you to just be quiet. I want you to stand on one foot in the air, the other foot in the air. If you can do this for 5 minutes, I'll give you $1. Well, he lasted about a minute and a half, but she was determined she was going to make that $1. So she was there for had that one leg up the whole time for 5 minutes. And I said, well, you won, and I'll give you $1. But she was always adventurous. She went to DePaul University in Chicago. She passed the Tennessee bar in 2011, started her own law firm in 2012, transitioned to a company called Cordell & Cordell in 2014. 2016, she was named a top 40 under 40 member of the National Advocates. But her main passion in life was always adventure. After traveling to most of U.S., Europe, China, and the UAE with her family, she ventured out to on her own self to Cambodia, Vietnam, Iceland, and other parts of the world. She jumped from a plane. She swam with sharks. And as a tribute to her adventurous life, and because her childhood dream was to go to space, a portion of her remains are going to go through this Earth orbit spaceflight program, so that every time those who look up, those who survive or look up, and they will see the stars. She went to space camp when she was 10 years old. Loved it. She would have gone every year if she could have. Because of that, we made a scholarship in her name for space camp at Huntsville, Alabama, and we hope to do this every year, so that some child who financially is having a hardship there can go enjoy space camp. Remember when she was in high school, part of arguing, she argued, and you've seen books written on this, did NASA really go to the moon, or was it a hoax? Well, that fired her up real bad. She argued that point of, no, it wasn't a hoax. And so she did a tremendous amount of research, read a lot of books, and took her little models of the lunar module and all this good stuff to the at school, and she defended her thought on whether it was a real or a hoax. And of course, she, like I said, she argued it very well. If she'd had to argue against somebody, she would have probably won. So, but we loved her. The time she was here, every one of you guys would say that the time that you had with your loved ones was special. And if we'd only known now, we would have made it even more so, you know. But her little dog was a teacup Yorkie, and she'd take that dog everywhere. She had a bag about this big, about this deep. And that dog, when she's getting ready to go somewhere, will automatically know that the dog's going with her. He'd jump into the bag. And then dog didn't give her much trouble, but sometimes he'd pat his head out, you know. Well, we still got that bag. And occasionally we'll take a dog with us. And he'll jump into that bag, and he's looking for Megan is what it is. But that dog's special. I hope that dog lives long. I hope that dog outlives us. Because that dog, every time I hug that dog, I think of Megan. And it's so nice to have something of them. So she's gonna enjoy this trip. This will be special. Beats skydiving, beats swimming with sharks at Cabo San Lucas, and this is just going to be her real adventure. You know? So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay. Well, I would like to say thank you again. Thank you for choosing Celestis Memorial Spaceflights. I could say that you have options, but you don't. We are it, and we are very proud. We are very proud of that. But this is my first launch. This is my first memorial service, and I just want to say thank you to everyone. It's truly a blessing and very special for me, as I've met so many of you and heard your stories. I tell a lot of folks that this position is a reward of faith, and I fully believe that, and you guys are awesome. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Charlie to give you your launch briefing.
Told you everybody is a story. I wanted to provide a couple of pieces of advice based on going to 18 of these things, and then one last word. Practical piece of advice number one: don't watch the launch through a camera lens. We'll get you all the photos you need. They'll probably be better than you can take. And if you're watching a launch like this, you're missing this. And words don't describe how even stunning it will be for you. But my advice is leave that camera in your pocket or around your neck, and we'll get you the photos that you're looking for of the launch. Take all the photos you want, but when it's T0, you want to soak it all in. Second piece of advice was said so well today. So always believe what an astronaut tells you, which is you're going to be pushing your loved one up all the way. You need to remember that this is a journey that you're involved in, and you need to be part of that journey. That's all I'll say. But we all can use all the help we can get. I'm going to close with the speech that I always give at these memorial services. And some of it's going to be a little bit, but it's necessary, less and less necessary these days. So tomorrow we're going to go out, we're going to go to a launch viewing site. We're all going to be excited. And I want to tell you that 3 things may happen. Thing number 1, of which these days you're 99.9% certain to happen, is you're going to have a successful launch. You're going to witness your loved one reach the stars. And I think all of us know how to react to that. Thing number 2 that might happen is the dreaded launch delay, right? So spaceflight still is pretty complicated. Getting a rocket to work is like getting a good golf swing. A whole lot of things got to go right for it to be successful. Not all of which are in the control of the amazing engineers at SpaceX, at the Air Force range, and other places. So there could be a technical problem. And I had the great privilege of working for many years for one of the Right Stuff astronauts, Deke Slayton. Deke always had a statement, says NASA doesn't give out any awards for an on-time failure. So in point of fact, if there's a delay, it's for a damn good reason. It could be we found an issue with the launcher, not as likely these days as when we first started. We found an issue with one of the payloads. And depending upon how important the payload is, sometimes that can delay the rocket. But we also, there's a cruise ship in the downrange zone, and we can't fly. There's overcast. There's high-level winds. There are factors that don't come together on time. So what do? Tee it back up and go again. Usually, there aren't any guarantees, but usually you can recycle for the next day, and we'll bring some more buses back, and if you can stay, we'll take you back out there again. But it might happen. Again, these days, this speech almost seems an anachronism because it's just amazing the cadence of missions that go on today. But nevertheless, you all need to be aware of that, need to be aware that number 2 could happen, and we have a delay. Number 3, and this is the tough one, there is some slight chance that for various reasons we might lose the launch. In which case, there's not a whole lot that can be done, and you have to be prepared for that. And the way I think about it is that I'm planning to choose my service when it's my time. And if there were the case where they were attempting to launch me and it didn't make it, my attitude would be strap me back on there and fly me again. And that's what we do. Your contracts say, for any reason the mission doesn't make it, we've already got the second sample of your loved one's remains, we'll fly them again at no cost to you. That's happened to us twice out of 18 flights. Last one was 2010. So long time ago. And as I say, it's really amazing the progress that rocketry has made, particularly if you look at some of those early 1960s attempts where they go up 4 inches and come back. We're not in that world anymore. And I don't expect there's any great or even minor likelihood that that will happen, but you have to be ready. You have to know. And part of why we created this company was to increase the demand for commercial spaceflight so that there's so much of that going on that spaceflight becomes routine. It's pretty darn routine these days. So I'm not expecting anything other than a dramatic success that we all enjoy. But it's my job, it's my duty, it's my privilege to bring this capability to you, but also know that it's a human project, right? So as a result of that, we have to be aware of that and be at least prepared for that. Again, that's the last time you'll hear me talking about that, but I wanted to be sure that everybody's got it in their hearts and in their heads that your loved one will get to space. We will get your loved one to Earth orbit. I will guarantee that. That's not a question. It may take us more than one try, but I don't think it will. Okay, wonderful afternoon. I just love hearing everyone's story. I think that's really the reason that I continue to do this. Yeah, at first it was like I like flying rockets and that kind of stuff. But I love knowing each and every individual that's on our flight. And you all have made that possible for me today. So thank you for that. Thank you for thanking us. We have a great team. So with that, we're bringing today's service to a close. We're going to say again, see you tomorrow, and let's go for launch. And we'll close this afternoon with one final selection from Anna, and then we're honored. We have a tradition at Celestis. We're always ending our service with a bagpipe version of Amazing Grace. So after Anna finishes her song, you can begin to walk out into the foyer, and I see our gentleman bagpiper right out there, and he might even do 2 rounds of Amazing Grace because it's a big crowd. Thank you so much for making our mission to serve you possible, and we'll see you tomorrow. Well, we'll see you in a few minutes, but we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. If you didn't get a chance to say hello to him before the service, get a selfie, get a book, he'll be here somewhere. Thank you all.